Diplomatic relations between the United States and Venezuela are continuing to deteriorate tonight. The U.S. no longer recognizes Nicolas Maduro as president of that country. In response to that, Venezuela has ordered American diplomats to leave Venezuela. The U.S. has not complied. The Trump administration now says, quote, all options are on the table regarding Venezuela. Could this lead to a military conflict of some kind with that country? Fox News chief intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge has been following the situation in Venezuela very closely, and she joins us tonight with the report. Catherine?
Thank you, Tucker, and good evening. Venezuela is much more than a regional conflict, with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo confirming that Iran has a significant footprint in Venezuela and other Latin American nations through the terrorist group Hezbollah. The FBI is seeking information about an operative, Ghazi Nasser al-Din, who is tied to Hezbollah and has Syrian and Venezuelan passports. Based on recent intelligence, Nasser al-Din was operating from Venezuela. Sanctioned by the Treasury Department, he has at least 10 aliases, and he's linked to clandestine networks in Syria that amplified the violence and fueled the Syrian refugee crisis, eventually drawing in the U.S., Russia, and Iran. National security experts said a similar scenario may be playing out in Venezuela. Latest projections from the Brookings Institution, a Washington, D.C. think tank, are 8.2 million refugees and migrants may leave Venezuela. That is 25% of the current population. And now Russia, China, and Cuba are backing the Maduro regime.
We're fighting against external and extra-regional powers that are using these countries as proxy conflicts because they rather fight the United States in a proxy battle than they would fight the United States in any kind of conventional battle in their home countries.
In his most recent interview, President Trump left the military option open, but significantly made no commitments, Tucker.
Catherine Herridge, a story we will continue to follow. Thank you very much for that. Venezuela was once the richest nation in South America. Caracas, basically a first world city, huge middle class, obviously massive oil reserves. And then that country got socialism. Now people are starving in Venezuela. Millions, as you just heard, have fled. The crime rate there is among the richest in the world. The income inequality also among the most profound globally. A small group of leaders have become even richer, everyone else impoverished. In other words, it didn't work. And the president pointed this out in the State of the Union on Tuesday.
Socialist policies have turned that nation from being the wealthiest in South America into a state of abject poverty and despair. We are alarmed by the new calls to adopt socialism in our country. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
Some in the Congress scowled when the president said that, but it remains to be asked, are there lessons from Venezuela that we should pay attention to? Mark Penn thinks there are. He was a pollster for President Clinton. He joins us tonight. Mark, thanks for coming on tonight. So what can the United States learn from what has happened to Venezuela?
Well, if you go back a little bit in history, Venezuela had a vibrant democracy with two parties. I actually worked for two presidents bringing polling to them. And the presidency went back and forth, the Adecos, the Copianos, but neither party really delivered for the people. So they decided to try socialism. But once the socialists got in, he dismembered all of the safeguards, like no re-election, that were preventing the return of basically the kind of strongman dictatorship that they had overthrown to have democracy. And then the economy went downhill, and then there were medicine, food shortages, and now there's a huge humanitarian crisis involving 30 million people right here in our hemisphere, and I think the administration's policy is just and right.
So you just uttered a phrase that made the hair on my arms go up. You said the problem was neither party delivered for the people. Neither party made ordinary people's lives better, so they elected a crazy person who broke everything. I mean, should both parties be thinking about how to deliver for people, not abstractions, but results, so we can avoid that?
On the day that the Green Deal, that might as well be called the Red Deal, it's really, really structured, is released, it is a warning that if the parties don't get together, compromise, and start delivering, look, Congress has about a 13% approval rating. This is what happened in Venezuela. Their enormous riches, enormous capability of moving that country forward, that could have been a model of Latin America. But instead, both failed. They made a bad choice. And once you make that bad choice, once you get someone in here who doesn't really believe in democracy, who believes in socialism instead, they get rid of the institutions like free press, like the idea of re-election, like a Supreme Court with real judges. And that's what happened in Turkey. That's what we see happening here. That's what happens every time that people cross the line from democracy.
I mean, once you elect someone and give him control over the army and the national police, once all the guns are in the hands of one person, like, what can you do to stop a dictatorship at that point?
Well, look, right now, I think we have a really good chance of returning Venezuela to the people of Venezuela and breaking this, which has gone on since 2002, now that I think Colombia and Brazil and the other countries in Europe is actually supporting us. So I hope we get Venezuela back to the Venezuelans. It is a just and fair cause, and we take the lesson that democracy is fragile, no matter how strong you think it is. And I used to go to rallies where 1 million people would show up. They would have universal voting, that it is fragile if we don't serve the needs of the people, and both parties ought to listen to that.
I couldn't agree more vehemently. Mark Penn, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.